Naturally, if you're starting out your credit card journey, top of mind will be which cards to go with. A common answer via YouTube, blogs, and such has long been Chase cards. Most of these platforms suggest one of the Chase Freedom Unlimited, Chase Freedom Flex, or Chase Sapphire Preferred, with the combination of them all making up the Chase trifecta. These cards are well known to offer strong, flexible value while being relatively simple to manage. They're also not going to be attainable for people who have opened enough cards in recent times. So, Chase reigns supreme for beginners on the back of three factors: simplicity, strong, flexible value, and lack of attainability for non-beginners. Or does it? In this one, I'm going to make an argument for why Capital One competes fiercely with Chase in these regards, and in fact may have the beating of Chase in some ways. Notably, the Capital One Savor and Capital One Venture Rewards cards, or maybe the Venture X, though for purposes of this video, we're only going to talk about the Venture. Ultimately, I think for beginners who are interested in the world of points and miles, should consider both Chase and Capital One, though in terms of which one to prioritize, let's make the case for Capital One. As much as there is a wealth of resources out there nowadays, I'd still recommend for beginners to go for simplicity with their first couple of cards, so as to gain experience with the fundamentals of earning rewards without the need to have to pay high annual fees or juggle a lot of statement credits. However, a simple card with crappy value, say just 1% back on select categories, looking at you, Credit One Platinum Visa, isn't the way to go. In general, complexity gives access to stronger and more flexible potential value, and so it makes sense to compare Chase and Capital One on these fronts simultaneously. The Chase Freedom Unlimited is a simple card with its no annual fee, 3x ultimate reward points on dining, 3x on drugstores, 5x on purchases through the Chase Travel Portal, and most notably 1.5x on everything else. Not particularly high value though, as there are plenty of 2x on everything cards out there nowadays. The Freedom Flex gives up some simplicity while gaining more potential value by swapping out the 1.5x catch-all for just 1x and adding 5x on quarterly rotating categories. The added complexity comes in how you have to manage the categories each quarter, as well as that 1,500 quarterly spend cap. Then, as an entry-level travel card where some degree of complexity is expected, the Chase Sapphire Preserve is relatively simple. $95 annual fee, just a single credit for $50 on hotel bookings through the travel portal, complimentary Dash Pass app membership, travel and purchase protections, 5x on the travel portal, Lyft and Peloton, 3x on dining, online groceries and streaming, 2x on other travel, 1x on everything else. One of its main value propositions over the Freedom cards comes in the increased flexibility in the redemption, where you can redeem your points for up to 1.75 cents per point on the travel portal via the Points Boots feature, or through transferring to travel partners for potentially even more cents per point value. Of course, using these options ramps up the complexity severalfold, but then again, these are just options. There are rumors, however, that this year, the Chase Sapphire Preferred will be refreshed to a $150 annual fee card, in where there is certain to be one or two more credits to add on to the complexity. Okay, so Freedom Unlimited, quite simple, not that valuable. Freedom Flex, less simple, potentially more valuable. Sapphire Preferred, simple enough for the type of card that it is, at least for now, quite valuable and quite flexible. Let's see how the Capital One Savor stacks up against its Chase no annual fee counterparts. Same 5x on travel portal bookings, excluding flights, only a 1x catch-all, but we do have 3x on dining, groceries, entertainment, and streaming. I'd say largely on par in terms of simplicity to the Freedom Unlimited, definitely simpler than the Freedom Flex, and its value compared to those cards will depend on your unique spending habits. Though, I'd imagine that for most people, having that 3x on all food instead of just restaurants puts the value proposition of the Savor slightly over the edge, even though it has a lower catch-all. Also, the Savor has no foreign transaction fees, while the Freedom cards do, making it a simpler decision in order to bring the Savor card when you travel internationally. And back to the catch-all, thing is, the $95 Venture has a 2x catch-all multiplier, which yes, is just the industry standard, though it beats out any of the cards discussed in this video so far. There's also a $120 global entry credit, which just requires a one-time action to fast-track through airport security indefinitely, plus similar to the Sapphire Preferred, unlocks flexibility in how you can redeem your Capital One miles, whether it be for travel at 1 cent per point or through transfer partners. Here's where I have to give the Sapphire Preferred the edge in terms of the flexible favorable redemption options, as it has a floor of 1 cent per point when redeemed for cashback, whereas on the Capital One Venture, it's a paltry 0.5 cents per point. If you want the flexibility between cashback and travel while still preserving value, it's important that you have both the Savor and the Venture so that you can flip-flop between the redemption options depending on what you're looking for at the time. All in all, I argue that the Capital One Duo beats out the Chase trifecta in terms of simplicity and potentially even value for most people's situations. Except notably if you prefer Chase's transfer partners, which, okay, is a commonly held view, as well as if you can consistently utilize the 5x quarterly categories. Switching gears, let's consider how feasible it is to get any of these cards when you're just starting out your credit card journey. I'd say that all of the aforementioned cards, except maybe the Venture, are great candidates as your first couple of credit cards. It's very important for your first or second card to be a no annual fee card or an annual fee card that can be easily converted to a no annual fee version, which is the case for the Sapphire Preferred. That way, you won't ever be put in the dilemma where you're considering canceling an annual fee card that carries your average age of credit history, and thus, if you cancel it, would probably drop your credit score by a considerable amount. However, we can still be a bit more precise in the road mapping. Chase has an unofficial rule known as 524, where if you've opened 5 or more personal cards in the past 24 months, you'll likely be automatically denied for any Chase card. So, as a beginner, you'll want to fill at least some of those first 5 slots with Chase cards, because doing otherwise would lock you out of Chase cards in the future. Thing is though, you still have flexibility within those first 5 slots. All else equal, whether you get a Chase card as your first, third, or fifth card should not have much of an impact on the overall approval odds. 524 is a known quantity that is relatively easy to work around as long as you understand it. What's more challenging to work around are Capital One's uncertain and potentially ever-changing approval rules. While they don't have a known deterrent for people who have opened a lot of cards recently, through several data points, they are seen to be doing so, as well as generally not liking people with a lot of recent credit inquiries, as well as people who they deem as maximizers or optimizers through their internal models. Or in some cases, not even that. I have a childhood friend's father who only held a couple of cards for decades, and when he applied for the Venture X hoping to get the points and miles for his retirement travel, he was surprised to see a denial. Honestly, you just can't be sure with Capital One. I've even heard of cases where people got denied at one point, and then after a few months with minimal change to this person's credit profile, approved. The best position that I think you can put yourself in is to apply for Capital One cards as early as possible in your credit card journey. Personally, if I could rewind my journey back to 0 cards, I would go for the Capital One Savor first, the Venture or the Venture X second, and then subsequently the Chase trifecta. But hey, especially to you beginners, I'm wondering if you are thinking of doing the same or you have alternative roadmaps in mind. Credit cards are really so personal, and there are just so many combinations that you can put together, of which some work better for your unique situation and some others less so. Maybe long-term, you want rich cashback multipliers to make up the bulk of your core credit card setup. Some of the cards that I talk about in this video on screen make this vision pretty possible. Here's your card nerd signing off, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.